People talk about outgrowing their circle. The truth cuts much closer to the bone. You outgrow who you had to be to stay in the room. The relationship was never the problem. The limiting version of you it required simply expired, and you reached a threshold. The hardest part is that you still love them. You aren't angry, there's no list of grievances. What you have is this quiet, unsettling awareness that something shifted. A relationship that used to fit now requires you to make yourself smaller to stay in it. It means withholding the work pulling you forward and dimming your own light, just so the room stays comfortable. And because you love them, you keep doing it. You call it loyalty or not getting too big for your roots. But somewhere inside, you know the version of you they love is no longer the version you are becoming. Today, we go to the place most people avoid. We're looking at the grief of a good relationship that simply no longer fits. That specific grief rarely comes with permission to feel it, and without permission, holding on quietly turns into self-abandonment. I want to name what is actually happening in these connections. These bonds were formed around a very specific version of you, a version that needed approval and relied on this group to feel secure about who you were. That past version of you was real. It was exactly who you needed to be for that season, and those people loved that person genuinely. But you have crossed into new growth, and that old identity updated. Now, in order to stay close, you have to reach back and wear a skin you already shed. I know this because I've lived it. I had people in my life who I genuinely cared about, and I remember the exact moment I realized I was editing myself in real time around them, softening observations before I said them, shrinking the things I was excited about because I could feel the ceiling in the room. I told myself I was being humble. What I was really being was absent. The identity you built to belong with those people kept you connected when belonging meant survival. It earned its place. The friction happens because staying requires you to keep wearing it. Notice if there's a name that just came up for you. That's the relationship demanding the heaviest toll on who you are right now. When you stop shrinking to stay, a quiet honesty settles into the room. You speak that unedited thought. Then, one of two things happens. Either there's a moment of genuine recognition and the relationship expands to meet you where you are, or the room goes quiet and you feel the gap clearly without apology. Both outcomes provide you the truth. For the first time, you receive the truth instead of managing the environment in order to suppress it. You don't stop loving them, you just stop abandoning yourself to keep them comfortable. The people who come with you into who you're becoming do it because they want a connection with the unedited you. Those relationships get more real, and you grieve the ones who stay behind with the full weight of what they meant. You allow them to be what they were without making their inability to follow mean that something's wrong with the direction you are headed. Carry this with you today. In the relationship where you feel yourself getting smaller, what specifically are you editing out? Locate the thought or the ambition that fails to fit in that room. That thing you keep quiet is pointing directly to your next stage of growth. If this friction feels familiar and you're exhausted by the performance of managing an outdated identity just to keep a room comfortable, your no-cost identity call is where we trace what lives underneath the editing. We examine the survival identity you're still running and look at exactly what it's costing you to keep wearing it. You find a link in the show notes. In the next episode, we go one layer deeper, looking at the friction of staying out of obligation, and the stories your old identity tells about what growth requires you to sacrifice. Some relationships were built on a version of you that's already said goodbye. Loving them means being honest about who showed up today. With strength and heart, I'm Sean Michael. Stay close. We spend a lot of time on this show talking about the threshold, the space between the identity that got you here and the one required for the new ground. You're listening to this because something in your current architecture is fracturing. You're running the performer playbook or the striver protocol, and it's costing you an immense amount of energy to maintain the facade. The external results are there, but the internal friction, it's burning you out. Most people will let this episode end and go right back into the performance. They'll put the mask back on for their next Zoom meeting and keep relying on the identity that's actively caging them. I'm looking for the leader who's done performing. If you're ready to look at the structural identity collapse happening beneath the surface, we need to map your architecture. Go to the link in the show notes, book your identity clarity call. We'll identify the exact survival identity running your calendar and begin the shift into conscious leadership. Stop performing, start becoming.